Thank you for joining me today on the Garbage Bag Girl podcast. This podcast is about all of us. It's about the things and the ways that make us feel pushed down and small. It is about how the smallest acts of kindness make the biggest impact each day. No one should feel like garbage, ever. Enjoy the show. Hi, this is Celeste. Welcome to the Garbage Bag Girl podcast, where we get to talk about all things that either make us feel small or the ways in which we don't want to feel small. And this is a continuation of the Healthy Adult series with Coach Shanna. Hey, girl.
Hey.
This is part 2. If you followed the first episode, we talked about the inner child, which was very interesting. Now we're going to talk about the adolescent phase. I would personally say it's not my favorite phase, but I would say it's the most complicated, in my opinion.
I would, even as a coach of this model, I would have to agree it's probably one of the most complicated, and this model helps simplify it.
Hence the age range. Let's talk about that. We were talking about that a little offline, and I was asking why such a big gap. Inner child is 0 to 6. It's like, hi, I'm here, although we can count a year in pregnancy. Right? You row. See, I took notes.
Yep.
But 7 to 24 is massive. 7 to 24 is like big gap. So tell us why that is.
Yeah, so in the adolescent phase of this model, it starts at age 7 because this is when our ego starts to develop or starts to come online. This is where discernment really comes into who we are as an individual, and then we start separating. We start recognizing, hey, I'm different than my siblings or my classmates or the environment around me. So that's about the age where ego comes into play.
I don't blend. Well, now I have to create a story to blend, which we'll talk about. So it's so interesting, and it makes me think about how I've always been told by child psychologists or teachers or in like classes with other moms where we talk about development ages of our kids. And I've always heard that your biggest influence is up till about the age of 7 or 8 with your kiddo, because not that you don't have influence, but the biggest is during that phase of their life, because they're about on the cusp of, okay, personality's developed, and now I'm like reaching. So now I'm pulling and I'm pushing and which makes sense because you said the ego is getting involved.
Yes.
Before that, parents, we always joke, they just do whatever you tell them.
Right.
Until then, which makes it a little easier. But then I always say, well, now they have an opinion.
They do. Yeah. And they're going to try and make their opinion heard, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they know. They've come right from their true selves. From 0 to 6 years old, that's their truest self. So they're going to try their true self on first.
Which is so sweet and innocent.
So sweet. And then ego says, well, I was just told that what I drew in class wasn't enough. Or something was said to me like, I'm not a dancer, or I can't dance, or I can't play soccer. Well, maybe I'm not good enough. And then we start pulling back. That's that push and pull that you were talking about.
And then when they're little, they might be like, nah, nah. I mean, they're just so confident still with that innocence, where now you're saying they're really questioning it, which is kind of sad.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
So she's a parent. Because you're like, no, you're still that. My son, even out at the age of 29, will say, if I want to feel the best about myself, I'll just come talk to my mom, because she'll just feed me full of all the awesome things about me, which I don't know if he's meaning it as a compliment, because I don't think he believes all of them himself. But I always tell him, but it makes him feel good to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm like, I'm not lying.
Yeah.
I just think I have a way to look at things that I see in you that you maybe don't see
Absolutely.
Yet.
And then his ego's like, if I try and listen to that, I might be told that I'm being egotistical, or I might be, thought too highly of myself. So doing that push-pull, but he knows where to get
Yeah.
that information from mom.
If I want to get fueled,
Yeah.
I just go to mom's house and shows me how amazing I am. My girls are like, don't feed on his ego. Mom, stop feeding on it. Like, that's what I'm here for.
That's right.
I feed on all y'all's ego, just for the record.
It's so great.
So what do we need to know about adolescent phase?
All right. So one of the biggest things about adolescent phase is there's 3 main characteristics or 3 important roles of our ego. Okay. And this is really important to remember. To keep us alive, to keep us safe, and to keep us accepted.
Do we all take notes?
Alive, safe, and accepted. So you've heard the reptilian brain or the brain of the caveman. Our systems haven't been updated for so long. Well, it has been thought that if we're not accepted into a tribe, we're going to die. That's literally what our bodies, brains, and minds think. We're going to die if we're not accepted. Think about middle-aged kids.
Yeah.
Right? They're doing everything that they can to stay accepted, to stay emotionally safe, a part of their groups.
Even if it means not making the best decisions.
Even if it means making, not so healthy decisions.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's exactly what their ego is designed to do. That's what our ego is designed to do. So there's the 3 main roles. Okay? Safe, alive, and accepted. Are you with us?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when we enter into the ego phase, remember how we talked about wounding from our childhood?
Yep.
Abandonment, neglect, a lot of the times not intentional. It just happens. And even if it is intentional, it fragments our emotional bodies. And then we take those wounds, those deep wounds, into our adolescence. And this is where our ego, to keep us alive, safe, and accepted, creates masks or personas. So a mask of, let's see, I had written down some things, some examples.
This is where Coach Shanna gets serious. She's got her glasses
I got my glasses on.
We're getting serious right now. Ego's forming.
All right, you hear? Class? In order to accomplish these things, the ego does whatever it has to do to make these things happen. So it will change who we are, who we were born to be, to help us feel accepted, to fit into the group. And what it does is ultimately covering up who our true self is. Okay? So in the abandonment of self, an example might be, if mom is in bed and she's in bed with depression and she can't get out of bed to make meals, I have to make meals for myself and possibly my siblings.
Which is my story.
Which is your story.
Mm-hmm.
So what belief...
I created a role for me that I was parent. I was mom.
At a very young age.
At 7.
To keep yourself safe, alive, and accepted.
Yep. Well, and at that time, it also gave me one of my greatest resiliency skills, which is purpose. I think if you are in crisis, especially, or if your world feels unknown, you'll pull on purpose. So all of this reminds me of, why does a kid decide to join a gang? Right? Or why do they join a specific clique in high school? Well, there's a belonging, there's a purpose, there's a story, as you would say, that they're trying to create for themselves, because they're trying to navigate, who am I? Where do I belong? Who likes me?
Yeah.
Who's judging me? Mm-hmm. It's an interesting process going on up in the brain.
All of those questions and actions to keep myself safe at a very young age, to keep me accepted, right? Yeah. So that I don't get hurt, or even to feel the wounds that are already there.
Yeah.
Right? Another one of the examples here is, if my parents show more love when I play sports, this is very similar to my story.
Yep.
And shun me or shame me when I quit, I abandon my my internal desire to do something else or to be myself in order to continue to get the love and acceptance of a parent. That was my identity all the way up till age 45. And once I retired from sports and I didn't have equipment in my hand, I was like, who was I? What was I here to do and be? If the trophies and the newspapers and, TV cameras, video, like that was my life for so long. And
your identity.
My father would ask me about my sports. So I did more of that to get that attention.
Yep. It's a way to connect with him.
It was. Yeah.
But then it probably overpowered any sense of even trying to learn who you are, which means those learnings get tabled or pushed for a while.
Yeah.
Because that sole focus. I think of motherhood. And a lot of moms who become empty nesters, oftentimes I think the reason, it's still a transition for most fathers, and they feel something deeply, but I don't think the heartbreak and the despair comes as often as it can with a mother, because often men, even from a cultural standpoint, are driven to a different level of success and providing and all those things.
Yep.
Where a mom is, okay, I've either been told or I've taken it upon myself to be the matriarch, the head of the household in that regard. Mm-hmm. Kids leave, and now who am I? What do I do?
Yeah.
And there's just that great, wow.
Yes. And I have worked with, I currently work with a couple of clients now who are empty nesters. And it is so key to find out who they are by going back to their childhood before they were a mother, to discover what they enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like dig deep about hobbies and just all the details.
The creativity,
That's crazy.
Yeah, the things that they enjoyed doing when they were young, bringing that back into their life. And part of their homework assignment is to go play with dolls, to go walk in the ground, on the ground, barefooted, to go play with a puppy, to bring that childlike and take the responsibility away and not feel guilty about it.
Wow. Hence all my childlike behaviors that I do today.
So beautiful. We talked about that last time. I absolutely loved that. Yeah. The childlike behaviors.
Where's she going to play right now? We don't know. So we just let her. She's going skydiving, or, not that children do that, but like in my brain, there's kind of this sense of how big can it get.
Yeah. Explore. Adventure.
Mm-hmm. It's all about adventures.
Creativity.
That's exactly what we say in my house. What adventures are we having?
That's
today?
right.
Yeah.
Right? And no 2 days are the same.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's full of more adventures for that inner child.
Crazy. It's interesting. Playing tag, ironically, with my grandson, who's 5, is one of my most favorite things to do. And I'm smart enough to know that I won't be able to catch him for probably after the next year. Mm-hmm. He's already so fast. So I'm right on that cusp at my age I can still do it on the playground. I still tag you, and he thinks it's hilarious because Grandma will play with him. But for me, I didn't play tag. I didn't play tag as a kid, and it kind of, my son, who's only 29, his father, just sits back and watches and laughs and observes, has no interest in playing tag. I'm the one's 51, and I'm like, tag, you're it. Tag, you're it. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you remember a time when you played tag. Your need for that is not as great as mine. I didn't do that. I didn't crawl around. I didn't get dirty in the sandbox.
Yeah.
I didn't do those things.
So this is a whole new experience and adventure for you. What does it bring up inside of you? What is the feeling?
It almost feels a bit selfish sometimes, because I think, is this more for him or more for me? Now, he loves it. Mm-hmm. There's no sense that there's not that. But sometimes I think, because it does bring up the emotion of adventure and fun and awe. Awe is a great word for me to describe a childlike feeling of wonder.
Yes.
Right, there's that initial. why everything they do is so new and fun and carefree, and it makes
Yeah.
everybody feel good to be around them.
I would be curious to ask you, what age do you feel when you're playing tag with him?
His age, 5.
5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So when you feel almost guilted, do we need to bring in that healthy adult and give that permission?
Mm-hmm. We're like, 5-year-old, you're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, it quickly goes away because my voice, my healthy adult reasons and knows that's why you're doing that. That's why your adult brain is disconnecting with the feeling that you're getting, because it's not new. It's not normal, rather. So, I don't stay in that space very long. It's more like I just observe it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's super interesting. I just had a weird feeling of, am I supposed to be doing this? There's no one else my age on the playground right now doing this with their child or grandson. I'm the only one.
Right.
Which is interesting. I don't know if they all feel like I'm too old or I'm just uninterested.
So ego comes in and says, "Are you too old?"
Yeah.
There's
a little bit of that.
Safe, right? Alive or accepted.
Yeah.
There's nobody else this age out there running around.
And then I quickly think it doesn't even matter.
And then your healthy adult steps in, right? Your conscious mind.
Yeah.
Well done.
It says, just play with him.
Yeah.
Look how much fun he's having. Look how much fun you're having. Look how bonded you guys are. Look how close you are. And he says, I get to be his favorite. So, I mean, as long as that word's being used, obviously life is fine.
Grandma is a favorite.
She's a favorite.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And what are the possibilities that if people are watching, that you're giving them permission to do the same thing?
That's a good point. I really would hope that, because we think of judgment, and you definitely have those people like, really? Is she out there doing it? But I'd like to believe that more people are thinking, good for you guys.
Yep.
Get it. Have some fun.
Yep.
Enjoy your life. I'd like to believe there's more of that. In my brain, that's what's happening.
That's beautiful.
People,
Then that's the reality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I wanted to make note on some of these questions that I do an activity in workshops, in courses, and even with my clients. And a lot of these masks are so unconscious that we're not aware of them until we get triggered, right? The emotion shows up, and then we have these physical sensations in our body, and we can go from 0 to 90 in 1 point nothing when we explode.
Yep.
And all of a sudden the emotion's here, right? That is wounding from our childhood, but the mask is coming in adulthood. So it just quickly goes through all 3 phases. And one of the questions I'll ask the clients is, how did you show up in childhood? What do you remember about putting yourself aside to make meals for your siblings, or to take care of your siblings? Or was there caregivers that would jump in and tease you, and there was no adult that stepped in and say, stop, that's not okay to do this? Where was your level of self-acceptance, right? So just by simply going back and asking these questions, our body's been there. It's our mind that filters. So our bodies through the wounding and the experiences that we've had, our bodies still know this. So when we get quiet and we start asking these questions, what did I change about myself? Your body will speak to you. And we'll do this when we do sessions. We'll kind of give an example how we go about doing it. We'll do a body scan. And then it starts to show up as an itch, a twitch, a tingling, an ache, maybe even an injury. Because energy will look for the weakest point of exit. Okay. But then we can start repatterning thoughts and programs from our childhood to make what's true today. Right? So as an adult, you're choosing to have the family. You're choosing to make the meals and to caretake. It's not something that's forced upon you. These are adult choices. That's what's true today. And sometimes that little Celeste will peep in and be like, okay, so I'm feeling a little abandoned right now or neglected. I need a healthy adult. And it might show up is your ache or a pain, but we won't know until we slow things down and we get really present.
Spend some time observing.
Yep.
Meditation's great for that.
Absolutely.
You're still enough that, like, oh yeah, that knee hurts. Oh yeah, my brain's doing that thing. Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of meditation is that it forces you to align.
Right?
Yeah.
Brings it to an awareness. Yep.
It's good. So good. This quote that's on here, let's read that.
Do you want to read it?
Sure. Who's Bessele van der Kolk? I mean, the fact that just that name alone is...
It was a cool name, so
right?
I thought that must be a cool quote.
You're like, van der Kolk, I'm taking that quote. It's a good one. As long as you keep secrets and suppress information, you are fundamentally at war with yourself. The critical issue is allowing yourself to know what you know. That takes an enormous amount of courage.
The critical issue is allowing yourself to know what you know. That's getting real raw and honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And we're not taught how to do that. We're just not.
Yeah.
Most of us aren't. I mean, if you are, great. Most of us are not taught how to do that. To be completely honest with yourself. A lot of the times our caregivers, our parents, siblings, it's just a mad rush to survive.
Yep.
And do this and say this and look this way to make sure that you're accepted. But what's really true?
Yeah.
What's really true about your experiences, about what you know about yourself?
And that's correct. It does take an enormous amount of courage. I mean, just spending time with yourself in the mirror and truly asking those deep questions requires a lot of patience and a lot of courage, because it's kind of like that movie when he says, "You don't want the truth." What is that? Military.
You can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
Often when people ask a question and then I ask first, "Do you want my honest opinion?" Well, of course I do. Really. I'm going to go ahead and give it. If I feel like it's kind of a point of, it could go south, it could, maybe they or do you just want me to jump into the well with you? Because I can do that too. I can be your cheerleader all day long.
Yeah.
But if you want my honest opinion, you might not love it. So go ahead and just tell me for sure. But it at least allows the person to say, I did ask.
Yeah, that's true. I did ask.
I did ask for that.
So I love that you went this direction, because this brings me to triggers. Triggers are a physical sensation in our body. They've also been called an emotional remembrance from our childhood.
Okay.
So, or a flashback.
Yeah.
So, triggered. Does it make sense what triggers are?
Yeah, to me, they're often referred to in PTSD situations, and they come across as negative. To me, triggers are a healthy benefit to learn and then realign with something.
Yes.
I feel like they're beautiful.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I'm doing that thing. And sometimes it's funny. I make a joke about it, and sometimes it is uncomfortable. Ooh, I'm triggering, and that's okay, because what am I supposed to learn from it? But until I knew that, which was probably taught by you now that I think about it, until I knew that, I jumped on the bandwagon of it being an unhealthy thing, and I was supposed to hurry and escape it.
Absolutely. Triggers was a lot of the times was brought up as a term in the therapy world, and it was a negative connotation, right? Stay away from the triggers. Even in the recovery world, stay away from things that trigger you. And in the healthy adult model, or the adult chair model, we say that triggers are our friends.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, there's just feedback. That's all they are. If we can sit in our healthy adult and understand that it's trying to teach me something, it's a direct reflection of what's going on inside of me.
Yeah. And oftentimes I think there's just something I'm supposed to learn with this. And I can take some time. I don't need to spend the time on it now, because like we talked about in the last episode, you said it'll still be there waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, it's not like it's going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to rush to define it or solve it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that awareness to what it is, and then your ability to say, okay, it's there. I feel it. I hear you. That was uncomfortable. I'll come back to you.
Beautiful.
That's okay.
Yep.
I don't have to solve that right now.
What a great tool.
Yeah.
Number one, awareness.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the trigger coming on. Like there's a physical sensation, right? Where it's triggered me before. Awareness. And then we get curious about it. I wonder what it could be. If I don't have time for it, I'm going to put it on the shelf or a parking lot, and I'm going to come back to it. If I am okay to sit in it, I don't want to ruminate in it, but I want to sit in it.
Yeah.
Right? 90 seconds or less. Again, this is when an emotion can be metabolized in our body, 90 seconds or less. So let's say most of the common deep triggers from childhood I have found with my clients are abandonment and neglect. So triggers are an emotional flashback from our childhood, right? And those wounds carry masks from our adolescent phases. You following me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And some of these masks would be, I've written some of these masks down, or the experiences that we've had. Codependency is a big mask. Literally the definition of codependency is, I'm only okay if you're okay. That's codependency. And a lot of the times we can grow up in homes where it was believed that parents had kids to help run the farm, do the chores.
Sure.
Right? You didn't have feelings and emotions to take care of as a child. You were there as an object or to help take care of.
Everyone in the family was a tool to keep that moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To keep things going, right?
Yeah.
So codependency. Narcissist. We all have a little bit of narcissism in us. That's a part of who we are and how we try to survive. And we can go into narcissism another time. But the victim, blamer, wearing that mask, creating a story and an assumption around blaming others for the reasons why I say the things I do or I do the things I do, right? That's not my true self.
Or you made me. I wouldn't have done that if you wouldn't have done that.
Yep, you made me feel this way.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. But people can't make you feel a certain way unless you give them permission to feel that way, right? People pleasing, perfectionist, procrastinator, class clown, right? We are seen and heard when people are laughing at us or looking at us, even in inappropriate ways. So these are masks that we're wearing in adolescence. Bad girl or boy, the bully. And that was a big part of your story was the bullying chapter.
Toughest chapter to write, for sure. Yeah, and this whole phase in general makes so much sense because I can see the lead up so clear of how I got there. And I've thought through in asking myself the question, what is the hardest part about that time? Like, what is it now that I'm struggling with? And one, I never wrote about it or talked about it, meaning I never even dealt with it. I kind of tabled it as just something that happened during that time when I was about 13. But then writing it and feeling it, especially as a healthier version of myself, made me realize how much harm I did. And that's really a lot to think about when you're reflecting on a part of your life. Like you said, we all have a little bit of all the things. And that's understandable. And people would read my story and say, oh, it's forgivable and understandable, but it's not really the point. I think for me, it's about, well, one, writing something that was the most authentic version of myself I thought was really important. But the other is recognizing that I have to work through that as well. And now when I talk to other kids, especially foster kids around that age, I get to relate and say, I was this age, And the path that you're on, as hard as it is only going to get harder if you really decide to make a decision to hurt someone. Like, it's a great conversation that I get to have because I did it and I was there. And I honestly get to say, no matter how you've been treated, no matter how much you hurt, if you cross that line and you hurt somebody else, you can go ahead and take my word for it. It is the single most painful thing that will come back and haunt you later. So really think that through. Really think through all the reasons why you get to say, I deserve to feel that way. You're making me feel that way, so now I'm going to act this way. The consequences mostly come to you. You're the one that has to live with that regret, live with that pain that you hurt somebody so bad they moved to another city to get away from you. Like, who wants to say that? That's big. Or your father passed away when you lied and you never got to say, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to hurt you. Like, you don't think in that moment because you feel so you feel so deserving of that feeling that you have because you're so hurt. And like you said earlier, you want to be seen and you want to create this person that you're trying to be. And I just spoke the other day to a group, and I said for the first time, I would like to tell you all that I didn't know better. But I did. I was making a very active decision to do those things. I chose the alternative to feel better for a second, to be seen as pretty and worthy and accepted, even though it was all BS and it was all surfacey just to get manipulated and get what those people wanted. It still felt good for a second to be identified as those things that I'd never been identified as before.
Right.
And I was like, I just want a piece of that. I just want to know what that feels like to be cool and walk down the hall with those kids that are cool and everybody thinks they're so pretty. And whether that's all true or not, it's still the story I made up in my head.
That's your ego.
Yeah.
Trying to keep that 13-year-old Celeste safe,
and
alive,
I was like, her or me. That's right.
That's right.
Her or me. If either Jennifer gets bullied, or what if they turn on me?
Keeping yourself safe.
Yeah.
You did exactly what you needed to do at that age.
Yeah.
What did that 13-year-old need to hear that she never got to hear?
That she was loved and accepted just the way she was.
Just the way she was.
Yeah. Yeah. But because she didn't get it, she sought it in unhealthy places, in unhealthy environments, knowing full well those decisions were wrong. They weren't healthy decisions. I was very aware of that. I didn't have any diagnosis that prevented me from knowing that. And now I get to positively use that as a tool to say to kids that are in that space, I remember being there, man, and it's only going to feel good for half a second in comparison to this whole thing we call life and this journey you're on. And that's not going to feel good.
I'm curious, the groups that you talk to, the kids that you talk to, is there something going on in their life at this time that would compare to the pain that you are trying to relate to them?
Foster care. Yeah.
So by then,
transitioning and losing their families, and
imagine that pain.
Yeah. So that's why it's relatable. So if I'm talking to that demographic that is going through, or a family change or disruption, or domestic violence in the home, anything that I was going through makes it super relatable, where I can really say, I really was there, and I did this pretty horrible thing that I'm working through now. And, I get to joke, and I'm old. I get to tell them, it comes back. It comes back to you. Your body manifests and says, we're ready to deal with this now, Celeste.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to get a physical symptom in your chest, or you're, like you said earlier, you're going to get a body pain somewhere to say, hey, it's like somebody nagging you all the time. It's time to deal with that. And you're like, I don't really want to. Yeah, but it's time. Yeah. Like the body knows.
It does know.
Yeah.
I had a thought come up, the cliche, the hurt people hurt people. Do you ever use that with the kids?
It's one of my favorite sayings. I just heard it a couple months ago, that hurt people hurt people. And it's valid. Like, I don't think that can be overstated. I do think, in every sense of the word, that hurt people will hurt other people.
Yeah.
Which is why the skill sets that we learn in the Healthy Adult series, the skill sets that we learn as we're continually working to be the best version of ourselves, is important, because we don't want to keep hurting people, even if it's on a small level and it just gets out every now and then. We say something crappy to somebody, and you're like, oh, that was unnecessary. I didn't need to say that. Because we're hurting. Mostly we're only saying those things when we hurt.
Yep.
So
yeah. how do we sit with the hurt so that we don't project it onto others? These triggers that we're talking about, they're in us. They've been in us for a very long time. And a lot of the times they are wounding from 0 to 6 years old. And I keep saying that. I'm going to keep saying that. Wounding happens from 0 to 6 years old. The wounding that happens in childhood is built up on the wound that's already there from 0 to 6. And then it starts to snowball, and then it creates more masks. I like to think of it as like a jigsaw puzzle, like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. Once all put together, we're whole. But when we're fragmented into pieces, each piece carries a part, including our healthy adult. So it's our healthy adult that we're really trying to get to in this model in a very quick amount of time.
Yeah.
So when these triggers come up, these wounds come up for us. We'll go more into these tools when we talk about our healthy adult. But it is so important to notice when it's coming up, these sensations. Road rage on the freeway. Oh, so often. Am I not enough that people can't be nice to me? Like, these people don't even know us when we're on the freeway. A lot of the times they're just, everybody's in their own world, but something's coming up inside of us.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe this is something you can do on the road. Anytime a trigger comes up, basically. Put your hand on your heart as you start to feel this emotion come up for you, and start to feel.
Yeah.
And just say, I'm here. You can go into, what do you have to share with me? Mm-hmm. I'm here to listen. Sometimes I've had a client just bust into tears. She didn't know the exact reason why, but she took that moment to say, hey, I'm here. So the healthy adult showed up for that little part, or that little one.
Yep.
And she didn't even need to know what it was. And she said it took less than 2 minutes to feel that.
It's like she felt something uncomfortable, discomfort. She recognized it was coming from somewhere, but instead of trying to figure out and dig deep, where does it come from, she soothed herself.
Yes.
Basically. I hear you, I'm here, I feel you. It relaxed that physical emotion enough to function and not hurt somebody.
Yeah, to process
in our words or anything. I use the word hurt loosely because it can be anything. It can be words, it can be actions, it can be small, it can be dramatic. It doesn't really matter. But before you get to that point, you're saying,
yes,
self-soothe by recognize and observing how you feel.
Yes, if we will breathe, that breath is what helps the emotion move. So you're aware that sensation.
Don't hold it in.
Yep.
Like, let it out. Yeah.
Deep breathe, that helps that emotion move through the body. So we move through the emotions, through the triggers, not around them, not over them. We don't distract to ignore them. We have to move through them. Feel to heal. Maybe some people have heard that, but you feel to heal. Okay. Some of the parts of the adolescent. This is really important for these parts of us. So we're conscious in our healthy adult, but we're unconscious when we're born. All the activities and things that are happening to us, those become memories and experiences for us in our unconscious. In adolescent, this is where our masks come into play, right? We're still unconscious. Once we get into our adult, then we can be conscious about what happens in our childhood and adolescent. So one of the characteristics of the adolescent phase is unconscious. Ego starts. This is our false sense of self. So I like to name these because these are like bullet points. This helps keeps it simple. Stories and assumptions. So our ego resides in our mind, in our thoughts, in our brain, right? So stories and assumptions can be created around blame, shame, victim. When you have that feeling of anxiety or something going on inside of you, you start to try and make sense of it. There's stories, right? And assumptions that happen. So-and-so said this about me. Well, it brings up this feeling that I need to defend myself for some reason.
Yeah.
It's not true. So stories and assumptions keep us stuck in that feeling.
Yep.
And this is where depression comes into play. It keeps us stuck. For our depression, just like our anxiety, if we can feel what's there, it will help move things through. Okay? Codependent, blame, shame, our survival, anxiety, depression. Yeah, but
it's good stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to put the website up for people to get in touch with you. Was there anything else we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about?
I will go back into adolescent phase when we start talking about adult phase.
Okay.
So we'll just kind of tie it all together. But thanks to those that have reached out so far. We're doing some big work.
We are doing some big work because the self-work is the most important work. We don't get to change, or should we change those around us. We have to start from here. And then as we elevate people with us. Or we don't. They find a place somewhere else. And that's okay too.
Yep.
Sometimes the letting go of those relationships can be hard. But the outcome is you feel better. And eventually some of those relationships I've seen even circle back, which is a beautiful thing when they're a better or more healthier version of themselves. So please visit Shanna's website. She just does truly remarkable work. It's made such a positive impact in my life, even from physically feeling anxious to she's also just a great human to be around. She generally makes you feel better just being around her, and that's not a bad thing. But thank you for joining us. Next time we're going to talk about the adult phase, the accountable phase. We all love that.
This is
as
great.
My kids say, adulting sucks, Mom. Maybe it does, but there are tools for you. So thank you for joining us.
We'll talk about the healthy adult part of it.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me today on the Garbage Bag Girl podcast. Always remember, you matter. Please subscribe and share this podcast and visit CelesteEdmonds.com to join my mailing list.